Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another episode of Buha's Block. On today's episode, we're going to be covering the state of the Lakers, 10 storylines at the 60-game mark, our 10-game check-in. A lot to cover over the past 10 games. The first game in this stretch was Luka Doncic's debut as a Laker. So he's played in 9 of the 10 games through this stretch. The Lakers have gone 8-2, ascended to number 2 in the Western Conference. They beat the Denver Nuggets in a statement road win. They have won 7 consecutive games. They are the hottest team in the Western Conference, one of the hottest teams in the NBA. Through this stretch, they are 11th in offense, 3rd in defense, and 5th in net rating. So they are playing like a top 5 team right now, but really going back to mid-January, have the best record in the NBA, the best defense in the NBA, and the 6th best offense. So we have a 7-week sample size here with various iterations of this group, with the Lakers looking like arguably the best team in the league, or at least in that top 4, top 5 conversation. So a lot to get into in today's episode, but before we get started, you guys know the drill. For those who are watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. And one more quick note, I know some of you saw this on social media and some of you heard it last night on my live stream after the Lakers-Pelicans game, but yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of Buha's Block. I started it on March 4th, 2024. First episode was with Austin Reeves and his friend Trent Swaim of Hillbilly Bogey. We talked about them launching that channel and just their love of golf, their friendship, a little bit of Austin with the Lakers. So it's been 366 days since then, and I've done over 200 episodes of Buha's Block, of live streams, of reactions, of vlogs, just done so much content over the past year. And I just want to give a thank you to anyone who has watched, listened, supported, commented, subscribed, followed, downloaded, shared, liked, reviewed, all that stuff, to all my guests, to all my family and friends who have supported and given feedback and watched and told their friends and coworkers about it. All of you, I cannot thank enough for helping make this happen. And I'm excited for the next year and the years to come. More meetups, going to have some merch, some memberships, going to have bigger guests, and continue to grow this out for the long run. And I'm really excited to see where the next year takes it. I've put in so much time and effort into this show, this creative endeavor with having my own YouTube channel, having my own podcast. I just wanted to make sure that my gratitude is widespread to all the people that deserve it. All right, so storyline number 1 is Luka Doncic has raised the Lakers' ceiling. Luka makes his debut, and as expected, there was a little bit of rust. First 2-3 games, he was trying to fit in instead of fitting out, as LeBron told him to do. And I think with Luka, the adjusting, it's still an ongoing process. But I think these 2 Clipper games and the Pelicans games, he's looked more like himself. It's 3 straight games with 29 plus points. He just joined Magic Johnson, Jerry West, and LeBron James as the only 4 players in Lakers history to have 30 points and 15 assists in the same game. And I have a feeling he's going to have many more of those performances in the purple and gold. So looking at his 9 games he's played with the Lakers, the first big performance, of course, was the Denver game. 32 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, and 4 steals in the Lakers' 23-point road win in Denver. That was the first time Luka really looked like himself. He picked up a technical foul. He was jawing with the crowd, with the Denver bench. He was celebrating. and he just eviscerated Denver in the pick and roll with his step back threes. And I thought defensively really fit into what the Lakers were trying to do. And as an aside, obviously they had one of their best defensive performances of the season, one of the best defensive performances I've ever seen against Nikola Jokic. So that was like the official arrival for Luka as a Laker, a big road win, arguably their biggest win of the season up to this point. Then he has the Dallas game, and that's an emotional one where it feels like he's pressing a little bit early on, but then hits a couple of threes. One of them gets waved off, but you see the passion he's drawing with the Dallas bench. A big part of Luka's game and him feeling comfortable is him trash talking other people and just being confrontational. That's a big part of what makes him special. But that game, he has a 19-point triple-double, 15 rebounds, 12 assists. And then something about the Clippers brings out the best in Luka Doncic, where he has his highest scoring average in the regular season against the Clippers and also in the playoffs against the Clippers. So something about the Clippers and the Pelicans game has 30 points, 8 rebounds, 15 assists, and the Lakers are plus 37 in his minutes. So I want to go through some of the Luka numbers quickly here, because I think it's a growing sample size, and half of the stretch he has not even resembled his true self. But just looking at some of the developments here, in terms of Luka's game adapting, he's been taking more threes as a Laker. He's been taking fewer mid-range jumpers as the Lakers have tried to optimize the offense. And he has been taking more shots at the rim as well. You've seen some of those cuts that he's had from the weak side. He is being assisted more than at any point in his career, which I think is a key development here, playing alongside LeBron and Austin. He also is averaging the highest turnover percentage of his career. So I think that's something that JJ's talked about, that Luka's talked about, that I think part of that is shaking off some of that offensive rust, also learning his teammates and the spots on the floor that they like to be, the spots on the, like he's had a few times he's tried to throw lobs to guys that either weren't ready for it or aren't really equipped to go and catch lobs. So I think that's all a learning curve with that. He's getting to the free throw line more than at any point in his career outside of the 2022-23 season. So I think you've seen, especially on drives, he does a really good job of briefly showing the ball but grasping it firmly. So a lot of times what happens is people will swipe down on it, they will slap his arm, and then he goes immediately into a shooting motion and gets a lot of those kind of like wild runners and floaters around the free throw line because of the way that he attacks drives. And the Lakers with Luka on the floor have been incredible in transition. They've been a high 90-something percentile, depending on the category, but they've done a really good job of getting out in transition with Luka, especially off of live rebounds. So that's where you've seen Luka is a really good defensive rebounder, and he's already formed a connection with LeBron. So the second, if LeBron is around the three-point arc, he will start to leak out in transition. Luka gets the rebound or the outlet pass and hits LeBron within a couple seconds, and LeBron's getting dunks and layups. Interestingly, the Lakers have been better defensively than offensively with Luka, but I think that speaks more to the identity of this team more recently. They have been better on both sides of the ball with Luka, and the Luka numbers have been really good. So with Luka on the floor and LeBron off, the Lakers are outscoring opponents by about 17 points per 100 possessions, which is a ridiculous figure, but it shows. Like we saw it in the New Orleans game in particular with Luka on. The Pelicans just could not stop him. And the amount of pressure he puts drawing to the ball, teams are either switching and it allows him to mismatch hunt, or they're selling out, blitzing, doubling, and that creates 4-on-3 advantages. And when one or two of those players is LeBron James and Austin Reeves, that's when you are in a world of trouble defensively. He's gotten them into the 90th percentile in terms of three-point volume. With him on the floor, they have become the team that JJ has wanted them to become. A high-volume, floor-spacing, three-point shooting team offensively with elite ball movement and elite decision-making and an elite shot profile, elite shot quality, and then defensively switch everything, wreak havoc, cause chaos, and then get out in transition and just rotate and swarm. So they're playing like a modern basketball team on both sides of the ball. Luka has changed the geometry of both the offense and the defense. Defensively, I think he's sneakily been pretty good. On the ball, he could be blown by, he could be attacked off the dribble, but as an off-ball guy, with his hands, his timing, his basketball IQ, and the steals he's been able to create in terms of playing passing lanes and helping, rotating, being the low man, really good defensive rebounder. So it feels like the Lakers are only scratching the surface of their potential offensively. As I mentioned, with Luka, they've been 11th in offense. I think that easily should creep up to the top 5. At the same time, they've been 3rd in defense, and that's in line with their past 7 weeks or so of them being the best defense in the league. So it feels like with Luka, the Lakers have a legitimate chance to be a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense. And historically, the benchmarks you want to hit are top 10 in offense, top 10 in defense, ideally top 5 in one of the two, but top 10 in both. And if you hit those 2 marks, you have a legitimate chance to go to the conference finals, to go to the finals, to potentially win a championship. So I think with the Luka trade, there was a lot of talk about the future, right? And certainly the Lakers got their golden off-ramp to the next iteration, the next generation of Lakers basketball, Luka plus star X at some point in the late 2020s. But in the present, they also got better. Anthony Davis is not available right now. Max Christie has cooled off a little bit since his hot start in Dallas. And Luka Doncic is looking increasingly comfortable in a Lakers uniform as expected. So a lot to be optimistic about, but the biggest thing has been Luka coming in and just elevating this group. And then storyline number 2 is the Lakers are legitimate title contenders. And for me, the first time I felt this group could really win the championship this season was the Denver game. I thought that was a statement win on the road against a team that has had their number. They had won 13 of the previous 14 matchups between the regular season and playoffs over the Lakers. And I felt like the Lakers left so many points on the board in that game with missed open 3-pointers, with turnovers. Like they dropped 123 and they easily could have had 135, 140 and just destroyed the Nuggets on the road and had like a 35-point, 40-point drubbing of a team that, again, has just dominated them for the past couple of years. So I think the Lakers looking at I have a couple charts here for the people watching on YouTube. For the people listening, I will read through them for you. But I have here the 5 teams, in my opinion, that I think can legitimately win the championship this season. And in order of record, here are the 5 teams. It's the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Boston Celtics, the Lakers, and the Nuggets. I think as of right now, these are the only 5 teams I think can win the championship this season. Cleveland is a bona fide contender. They arguably should be the favorites, but I think for me, I currently have them number 3 behind OKC and Boston, but they're 51-10, first in offense, 7th in defense, and 2nd in net rating. So top 7 on both sides of the ball, elite stuff. OKC, though, is 50-11, so 1 game behind them, 4th in offense, 1st in defense, 1st in net rating. So they're top 4 on both sides of the ball. That's why I think the Thunder are in a tier of their own in the West. They should be the clear favorites to come out of the West. And I know there's an element of like, let's see them do it. But I mean, they're having a historic regular season, and really the 5 teams, ESPN just wrote about it today, but the 5 teams to put up a similar point differential to them all won the championship. None of them went to a game 7. I think OKC is well positioned. Then you have Boston at 43-18, 3rd in offense, 5th in defense, 3rd in net rating. So they're top 5 on both sides of the ball. You have the Lakers, 39-21, 9th in offense, 13th in defense, 12th in net rating. They're a borderline top 10 team on both sides of the ball. Of course, you want to be higher in at least one of the 2 categories, which I will get to in a second, but still right there in terms of being like a top 10 team on the course of the season, even with some of their earlier struggles. And then Denver, 39-22. They are 2nd in offense, 17th in defense, and 5th in net rating. So the other 4 teams all are top 5 in net rating on the season. They all project as legitimate championship contenders. I think the Lakers, with the way they've been playing the past 7 weeks, and the Luka trade also belong in that conversation. And now looking at my second table here, this is evaluating things since January 15th. And so I picked that date because that to me is when the Lakers turn their season around. That is when they had this sliding doors moment with the Miami game. They're on the verge of losing their fourth straight game. It would have been a really disappointing start to 2025, and they end up rallying and winning that game. And then since then, they've gone 19-4. So looking at the other teams over that stretch, Cleveland is 17-5, first in offense, eighth in defense, first in net rating. So Cleveland's basically been consistent no matter what stretch you want to pick. OKC 17-5 as well, second in offense, seventh in defense, second in net rating. Boston is 15-7, fifth in offense, fourth in defense, fourth in net rating. The Lakers are 19-4, sixth in offense, first in defense, third in net rating. Denver is 15-7, third in offense, 21st in defensive rating, and sixth in net rating. So my biggest issue with Denver, and the reason why I have them fifth, because I know some people still have them ahead of the Lakers. I just think it's the defense. I think as we're looking at this stretch, they've been bottom 10 in defense over the past 7 weeks. On the season, they are 17th. I just don't think they have the defensive personnel to win a championship. I think the offense and Jokic, like that combination, is good enough to beat just about anybody in a 7-game series. But once you get to the conference finals, I just don't know that they have enough right now. I think the other 4 teams do have enough. But my point with all this is, I'm sure some skeptics will say that I'm cherry picking the numbers to make the Lakers look good. But I think looking at this group before mid-January, before they started the stretch, it is just unfair. Like, before December 29th, they had D'Angelo Russell. And for most of January, they had AD and Max. And they also had the LA wildfires and JJ losing his house and several guys being displaced and having to stay in hotels. So like they had a lot of adversity in that like late December, early January stretch. And then even before then, they obviously were up and down. This is a new group for the most part. And I think it's been really fascinating to see the Lakers gel and look like a legitimate championship team. So right now I have them number 4 in my title power rankings. I do still have Boston, OKC, and Cleveland in that order ahead of them. I am open to moving the Lakers up. I think if anything, they're trending upward, not downward or to the side. So I think if they have a really difficult remaining strength of schedule, if we're having this conversation late March, early April, and they have won at the same rate or even at a similar rate, I think that I will potentially move them up as high as number 3 or even number 2. But it feels like the Lakers are finally being recognized as a legitimate championship contender. I think a lot of people are a couple weeks late to that realization, but it's here. Storyline number 3 is a statement stretch. And this is going to build upon the first 2 storylines. I think a lot of these storylines intertwine. The Lakers have not only gone 19-4, but let's look back at some of these statement wins. So they beat the Boston Celtics by 21. They beat Golden State at Golden State by 10. They beat the Knicks without AD on the road by 16. They beat the Clippers by 25 on the road, just absolutely waxed them. They beat Golden State on the day of the trade deadline. They beat Indiana without Luka and LeBron. Austin goes off for 45. Then coming out of the All-Star break, they go into Denver. They beat them by 23. They beat Dallas in the Luka revenge game. They just beat the Clippers a couple times in big games for the West standings. And they just have passed basically every test that's been thrown at them. Like some of the losses that they had earlier in the season were pretty discouraging with the way that they rolled over, the way that they got waxed in the third quarter, the second half, whatever the context of that game was. But I include this in the broader scope of this 10-game plus stretch because I just think that every championship team has a stretch like this. Cleveland, OKC, and Boston have basically had a season like this, and that's why I think those 3 teams really belong in that conversation. But this is the stretch. If the Lakers win the championship and we look back at the turning point and when things really got right for them, I think we're going to look at the level they played at since mid-January. And even looking at, because part of that was with AD, part of that was with Max Christie. So let's even look at this 10-game stretch in particular. Coming out of the All-Star break, they had 7 consecutive games allowing 102 points or fewer, which shows you, especially at 2025, the level that this defense is at. Like that's like early 2000s allowing 85 points or fewer in like 7 straight games. Like it was high level defense for 2024 and 2025. So I just think that this broader stretch of 19-4, but 8-2 specifically, if we're looking at the 10 games, this has been the Lakers continuing to cement their legitimacy as a contender. Like, I think it's important to show a sustained level of excellence, a sustained level of consistency. If you are to be taken seriously as a championship team, you need to show that you can win 7 in a row, that you can win 19 of 23. And the Lakers have checked that box in a way that they had not done so earlier in the season. And I think that is another thing that is worth talking about. Storyline number 4 is LeBron James is the through line. And just in the past couple of days, some incredible accomplishments for LeBron James. He gets his 1,000th regular season win, which is the 4th most all time. He reaches 50,000 combined points between the regular season and the playoffs, something that has never been done before. He created his own 50K club. But then he wins Player of the Month for February in a month where Nikola Jokic went 10-2 and averaged a 27-point triple-double. In a month when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander went 11-2 and averaged 31 points and 7 assists, LeBron James wins Player of the Month, averaging 29 points a game, 10.5 rebounds a game, 7 assists per game, and Lakers go 9-2 with him in the lineup, 10-2 overall. So this was a really tough month to win Player of the Month, going up against the 2 MVP favorites. But like, LeBron deserved it because he has carried this group throughout this entire stretch. We talk about mid-January as being the turning point for the Lakers. Well, what have been the through lines? It's been first and foremost LeBron and his greatness. I think number 2, it has been JJ and the coaching staff, their attention to detail, their game planning. And number 3, I throw Austin in there as really growing into a legitimate number 3 option, but even being a number 2 option during some of the stretches that AD was out or that, if LeBron missed the game or whatever. So I think with LeBron, the defense has been at a remarkable level. JJ's talked about it since that Miami game in early December. Those two had a conversation, and LeBron has really bought in from both a leadership perspective and a defensive perspective. I don't quite agree with JJ that he's been at like an all defense level, but he's been at a really high level, and a really high level compared to where he was at earlier in the season, where he was at last season. And for a guy who's age 40, year 22, most mileage in NBA history by a decent margin now, like for him to be bought in on the defensive end, for him to be rotating as the low man, for him to be tagging rollers, for him to be boxing out, for him to be blocking shots, contesting shots. If that guy's doing it at age 40, year 22, you can't step on that floor and not defend with the requisite energy and verve that LeBron is. So I think that has been a driving force through this, is the Lakers have remained elite regardless of who's been in the lineup defensively, and LeBron has been a significant part of that. And that goes against, I think there's a narrative that he doesn't play defense, that he's a bad defender, and that goes against that narrative. But then on the offensive side, we've seen him shapeshift, and we've seen with AD in the lineup, he played a certain way. With AD out, he obviously ramped it up offensively. And then now with Luka in, he has played more off the ball. He's been taking more threes. He's been cutting more, getting out in transition more, and it has worked amazingly. And LeBron has talked about being a natural born wide receiver, Luka being a natural born quarterback. I would also argue LeBron is both a natural born wide receiver and a natural born quarterback and a natural born tight end and corner. And like, he could play any position on a football field, just like he could play any position on the basketball court. But that partnership between Luka and LeBron, we still haven't really seen the 2-man game. I would like to see more of that, and I am planning on asking JJ Redick about that. But LeBron as a screener, a cutter, a transition weapon. How many times have we seen already Luka gets a defensive rebound or an outlet pass and LeBron leaks out, gets a layup, gets a dunk? Like their synergy there has been great. But LeBron has really picked his spots in an effective and efficient way. And then when Luka's off the floor, he's back to being the point guard and running the show or co-piloting it with Austin Reeves. So I think LeBron has been playing at an MVP caliber level. I think that right now, if the season ended today, there'd be a lot of people that would put him number 4 or number 5 on their MVP ballot. I think he'd get a lot of votes for first team All-NBA. I think he's a second team lock and then, a candidate for the first team. And that is a testament to his greatness. It is a testament to his mastery of the game. It is a testament to his mental fortitude. It is a testament to his versatility and just like he's turned himself into, and he's always been an off-ball weapon, but he has fine-tuned it, I think, and especially with the shooting, as the shooting has gotten better. Like the basket to pass 50,000 points was him catching the ball on the left wing from Luka, gathering himself, rising up for a contested three-pointer, and that's how he cracked the 50K mark. So LeBron, like Luka is the new franchise player, and there's a lot of attention on that. And then the Lakers and the title conversation, and that's why I started the storylines the way I did. But LeBron is right there as the primary through line through this stretch of 7 weeks. He has been a driving force on both sides of the ball, and he has been playing at again, I think, a back end of the ballot MVP level, which I did not have on my bingo card in 2025, right? Like, I think that there was still, okay, can he be a top 15, top 10 guy? Like, he's been a top 5 guy for going on 2 months now. So LeBron is just continues to break. Like, it looked like for a second he was grappling with Father Time, and Father Time maybe briefly had him in a chokehold, and LeBron Uno reversed it and now has Father Time back in a chokehold. And who knows? Like, Luka jokingly said he might get to 70K points. I mean, if anyone could do it, it's LeBron, right? It's just really a matter of how long he wants to play. As Luka has acclimated, LeBron has stepped up, carried the offense, made huge plays on both sides of the ball, and he's just been balling out in a much needed way. Storyline number 5 is JJ Redick has come into his own as a head coach, and this has been building for a while now, but I think JJ, to me, is someone who should be on a lot of Coach of the Year ballots right now. I think Kenny Atkinson, with the job he's done with Cleveland, with largely the same group pre DeAndre Hunter trade, like they're at an incredible level, a historic level, and I understand why a lot of people have him first on their Coach of the Year ballot. But I think JJ should be number 2 or number 3 moving forward for the job he's done with this group. As again, continue to reiterate, they've gone through several iterations and several identities on both sides of the ball. He has been very adaptable and flexible as a coach. I think at times early on, he coached more for the team that he wanted compared to the team that he had. Then the Lakers went out and helped him get the team that he wanted, but he also made his own adjustments to figuring out the way to optimize guys. And I think particularly on the defensive side, he's done a lot of creative things with, okay, we don't have a traditional rim protector. We don't have a traditional post defender at the center spot. So let's move Jackson Hayes off of big men, off of centers, and have him be the low man, have him be a helper, a roamer, a weak side guy, and leverage that 7-foot frame, that speed, that athleticism that he has. And let's leverage Rui, who we are maybe trying to force into being a wing stopper. Okay, well, let's put him on a Jokic, a Towns. Let's have him use his strong base, fronting them or battling them on the block, and then funneling them into help. And then the Lakers have done an incredible job recently of doubling and swarming and rotating out of that. They've done a good job of selectively playing off of shooters. I've talked about like the amoeba style defense that they're doing right now, where everybody is in sync, everybody's on a string, and if one guy rotates up, there's a guy replacing him. And it just feels like it's kind of like, one of those movies or one of those villains where like they get a limb cut off and then another limb grows back. And like, that's kind of what's been going on with the Lakers defense. And I think JJ deserves a lot of credit for it, because I think the Lakers have better defensive personnel than people think, right? I think DFS, Vando, and Gabe are all really good defenders. I think LeBron has been defending at a really high level for a couple of months. I think Luka's an underrated defender where, yes, point of attack on the ball, he can be blown by again, but he's a good help defender, really good at deflecting balls, playing passing lanes. I think Austin is an underrated defender, as long as you're not trying to to make him like your primary perimeter stopper. And even Jackson, in a certain context, can be an effective defender. And Rui has been much better defensively, but they are not the best defense in the league just because of their defensive talent. Like on paper, there are several teams, including some of the teams in that championship conversation, that have better defenders or more defensive depth on paper. They have fewer weaknesses defensively. But JJ and the coaching staff deserve a lot of credit for their game plans. And looking at the Boston game, the Golden State game, the New York game, the Golden State game a second time, the Denver game, the Clippers games, like they have coached their asses off. And I just think that JJ has really come into his own as a head coach over the past month and a half, 2 months. To me, he is a top 10 coach in the league. I'd have to really sit through and sift through my rankings to give you a better place as to like where he ranks, but he's probably like 7, 8, 9, somewhere in that range for me. And for that to be the case for a guy who's a rookie head coach, you saw just listening to him talk about the game, the high level strategy and ability to communicate and break things down. And now he has taken that and applied it. And you've seen the buy-in from his players with the offense, the defense, their roles, the rotations, the lineups. This is a group that is very connected. And I think JJ has built a culture that the Lakers have been lacking for years. And clearly, like the end of the Frank Vogel era, the Darvin Ham era, they just didn't have this type of culture. And I think that is something that JJ deserves a lot of credit for. JJ has stuck the landing. He has kept the group together. He has adapted on both sides of the ball. I still think, again, there's so much more they could be doing offensively, so much more they will do offensively. And so I think JJ is another important and key through line throughout this stretch as the Lakers have navigated, again, injuries, trades, adversity, a tough schedule. JJ has been there leading the way. And I think he's become a really good coach throughout this process. The next storyline is the defense. And as I've mentioned through several times throughout this episode, the Lakers have the best defense in the league over the past 7 weeks. They have the third best defense since the Luka trade and the third best defense with Luka in the lineup. And at this point, again, as I said, we have to retire our priors on the Lakers before mid-January, specifically January 15th. And I think we have to retire the preconceived notions with the defense, because up to that point, the Lakers had largely been a bottom 10 defense throughout this season. And something flipped in mid-January. And I think it's been a confluence of things with JJ and the coaching staff and the game planning, the attention to detail, and leaving certain shooters and just creating a really smart team defense. I also think it's been the individual performances of guys like LeBron and Rui and Jackson all stepping up with a certain level of engagement and energy, and those guys also being put in better spots defensively. I think it's also been the DFS trade and Vando getting healthy and Gabe continuing to be a point of attack defender off the bench. So I think there's been a lot of things. Also, some of the two-way guys in Jordan Goodwin and Trey Jemison and Christian Coloco. So I think the Lakers have fostered a productive defensive culture. So I've touched on the defense a lot, so I'm going to keep this one relatively short. But as I mentioned, I think just the level that they've been at defensively is something that I don't know if it's sustainable the rest of the season in terms of being the best defense or even a top 3 defense, but I do think they should be a top 10 defense moving forward and potentially a top 5 defense moving forward. The schedule does get a bit tougher, and I will touch on that with one of the other storylines. But this group being in the top 10 combined with their offensive potential is, again, what I think makes them a legitimate championship contender. And I think JJ and the coaching staff have done some really unconventional things. The players have bought into the scheme. JJ has done some tweaking with the scheme in unconventional ways of playing centerless, playing smaller, doubling, rotating, being very aggressive in their coverages against primary guys. and also their coverages against non-shooters, non-floor spacers, and it has largely worked. And they've been creating more turnovers. They've been better with passing lanes, better with help defense. They've been rebounding the ball better defensively. The rim protection has not really missed a beat. I think the New Orleans game and Zion in particular showed some of the limitations with this group in terms of their interior defense, but there was also no Rui in that game. I think they really missed him in that game. And I think Zion might just be an exception, but they do have Giannis coming up. They'll face Jokic a couple more times. So those will be two other star bigs that will test their paint defense, their rim defense. But overall, outside of, I think, teams that can really put pressure on the rim and maybe some elite shot creators that can just shoot over the best defenders or the Lakers defenders, they are in a pretty good spot defensively. I think they look like an elite defense moving forward. And again, I don't know if they will be the best defense. If it's January 15th to April 15th or whenever the final day of the regular season is, I don't know if they're going to be the best defense over that 3-month stretch, but could they be the 7th best defense? The 5th best defense? I think so. And that, to me, has also changed the trajectory of this group in terms of their potential and their likely playoff outcome. And then the next storyline for me is the injuries. So right now, the Lakers are a bit banged up. They're without Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, and Jordan Goodwin, 3 of their top 9 players. 2 starters in Reeves and Rui. They're 3rd and 4th options and leading scorers respectively. So they've been without multiple key pieces here. And in terms of updates, it seems like Austin is going to be back at some point this week, potentially against the Knicks, if not potentially against Boston on Saturday. Rui is set to be reassessed on Friday. So I think that's one that could take some more time and probably bleed into next week. I would assume at this point he's going to miss the game against Boston on Saturday. And then Goodwin also doesn't seem to be too serious of an injury. And so he's another guy who could be back potentially by the end of the week or early next week. And then we also have a Maxi Kleber update. I've talked about it a couple times in the Q&A portions of my lives, but I've heard that there is optimism that he is on pace to return before the end of the regular season. And as a stretch big who could defend multiple positions, that could be a sneaky addition for the Lakers with like a week or 2 left before the playoffs start. So a lot of time, and another month or so before realistically he would be back. But barring any setbacks, it looks like that there's a chance that the Lakers could be getting a rotation caliber player back right before the playoffs, and a guy who's played with Luka, has played with DFS, has played with JJ, has been coached by Greg St. Jean. So I think Maxi Kleber could be a guy who works his way into the back end of this rotation and gives the Lakers a little bit of a different look as a stretch 5 who's switchable. But that's the latest on the injury front. The next storyline is West seeding. And as I'm recording this, the Lakers are number 2 in the West right now. And with the way that the bracket is currently set up, you have about 3 tiers, right? So OKC is locked in to number 1. They have 10 fewer losses than the Lakers. So no one is going to catch OKC. They're going to be the number 1 seed. Then you have this group with the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Grizzlies, and the Rockets, but between 2 and 5. And it looks like those 4 teams have separated themselves from the rest of the conference with about just under 6 weeks remaining. So those 4 teams are going to be jockeying for 2 to 5. And then you got the next group with 6 to 10, 6 to 11. And there's a lot of uncertainty within that group with the whole Dallas situation and Phoenix and San Antonio and Portland's on the rise. So I think a lot to be determined with the bottom end of the play-in mix and those battles there. But for the Lakers purposes, they're going to finish between 2 and 5. And I think there is a vast difference between being number 2 and being number 5. And of course, there are degrees in the middle, depending on if they're 3 or number 4. But I think for the Lakers, the goal here should be to get a top 3 seed over the final 22 games of the regular season, because I think looking at it, if you're the 2 or 3 seed, you're on the opposite side of OKC, so you don't face them until at least the conference finals. And you allow them to potentially get eliminated by somebody. But especially if you could get the number 2 seed, now you play the 7 seed, which is going to be a play-in team, and you have home court in round 1. You have home court in round 2 against the 3 or the 6 seed. and then you potentially play OKC in the conference finals. If you're the 3 seed, you have home court over the 6 seed, and then depends on what happens with the 2-7. But I think those two outcomes are much better for the Lakers than being 4 or 5, because if you're 4 or 5, you play OKC in round 2, assuming you survive the 4-5 matchup. And then even if you beat OKC, now you're potentially playing the 2 or 3 seed in the conference finals, also without home court advantage. I know the Lakers have advanced without home court advantage before, but I think it's better to have it than not. So if they could be the 2 seed or the 3 seed, I mean, 2 seeds, the best case scenario, I would rank them 2, 3, 4, 5. 4, at least you have home court in round 1 against the 5 seed. But I think if the Lakers can be on the 2 or 3 seed side of the bracket, they are well positioned to get to the conference finals. And then once there, it's OKC with home court, but they're facing LeBron and Luka. And I don't know any team that's going to want to see those two guys in a 7-game series. So I think that the seeding watch here over the final 22 games is going to be fascinating. I do think it's going to play some part in the Lakers' ultimate success, how far they can ultimately go. I would peg their chances a bit lower if they're the 4 or the 5 seed and still on the OKC side. Like, I think the best case scenario is they get the 2 seed and Denver's the 4 seed, and Denver advances in round 1, and then they beat OKC in round 2. Lakers play Denver in the conference finals, and they have home court in that series. So either way, I think they're on a collision course with OKC, but I think it's better to probably face them in the conference finals than the semifinals. Have some more momentum, have a couple of series wins under your belt, and go into that matchup brimming with all the confidence in the world, having played at a high level for quite a while, and having LeBron and Luka potentially be the 2 best players in that series, and that being the thing that carries the Lakers over the Thunder to get them to the finals. So I think the Lakers are well positioned to potentially get the number 2 or the number 3 seed. And then next storyline is Jordan Goodwin has emerged as the Lakers' 9th man. And that is not something that I think anybody anticipated. So going back to when he made his debut in the Indiana game. Remember, no LeBron, no Luka in that game. So it was right before this 10-game stretch. So it was technically 11 games ago. But he makes his debut, 10 points, 4 rebounds, an assist. He closes that game. Remember, he's played in crunch time in that game, plays 25 minutes, which is actually still the most minutes he's played for the Lakers in a game. Then you have the game against Utah, Luka's debut. He has 17 points, 8 rebounds, 3 offensive rebounds, an assist, a couple steals, 8 for 11 from the floor, plays 22 minutes in that game. And then from that point, outside of being inactive against Charlotte, he has been in the rotation. Like, looking at his minutes log here, 25, 22, 17, 20, 11, 6, 13, 21. Like, he has established himself. Like I've said it before, the Lakers have a top 8. It's the starters plus DFS, Vando, and Gabe. I think Jordan Goodwin has emerged as the number 9 guy. I also think he is going to be added to the roster at the end of the regular season. Lakers have no incentive to do it now. They get to save some money on their cap sheet, but waiving Cam Reddish and adding Jordan Goodwin as the 15th man roster-wise, but obviously 9th man in the rotation, just makes a ton of sense, and I expect that to happen. And looking at some of his numbers, so right now, this is the best he's played statistically in his 4-year career in terms of on-off. Like, at other points in his career, he's been a negative in terms of plus minus, and in terms of advanced metrics, he is trended toward being a negative or like back end of the roster type player. He has played like a legitimate rotation player so far in his brief stretch with the Lakers. This is the least involved he's been as a ball handler and playmaker, and it makes sense because the Lakers already have LeBron and Luka and Austin. But this is also the most efficient he's been with his shooting and just, again, some of his advanced metrics. He's averaging a career high offensive rebounding percentage. So one of the themes here has been the Lakers doing things a bit unconventionally and having Rui act as more of a big and Jackson act as more of a wing, and like playing smaller and playing these funky, like small but big, where there's no center, but like 4 of the guys are like 6'7" or above. And like they've just done things a little bit funky, and Jordan Goodwin has really fit into this identity. So he's almost functioned like a big man out there. And the guy that I've compared him to and see a lot of similarities in, and I've heard the Caruso comparison. I don't think he's quite as athletic as Caruso. The guy I actually compare him a little bit more to is Bruce Brown. Like, I think you see shades of Bruce Brown in his game and how Bruce Brown could have potentially fit with the Lakers. Because one thing, Jordan, like if there's one weakness or thing to nitpick with Jordan Goodwin, it's just the 3-point shooting. He has not been a good shooter. He is a guy you can play off of, and like he will occasionally make threes, but as a Laker, he is shooting 31.3% on threes, which is about 5% below league average. And for his career, he's a 30.8% 3-point shooter. So the one thing with him is he is a spacing and shooting liability. However, he makes up for it by basically being a power guard who can run pick and roll as a screener, operate out of the short roll. We've seen a lot of his assists have come out of making reads out of those 4-on-3 scenarios, but he's been a defensive playmaker with his steals and his blocks. He's a guy who's about like 6'4", but he has the length of a bigger player. And again, that's where I bring up the Bruce Brown comparison. But the rebounding, like multiple games with multiple offensive rebounds. He's had at least one offensive rebound in 7 of his 8 games. But like, this is a dude who has just come in, been a connective piece, fit into the Lakers' identity. And again, given them this screening option where, because he is not a shooter, teams will often put their worst defender, the duck, the guy they want to hide, on Jordan Goodwin. And then so what the Lakers do is they have him come up, screen for Luka, screen for LeBron, screen for Austin. And then if the team decides to switch that, then Luka, LeBron, or Austin can attack that player off the dribble. Or if they decide to blitz or double, then all of a sudden they can hit Goodwin rolling, and now he's in the short roll, Draymond/LeBron roll, and he can make those reads out of 4-on-3 situations. So I think he's come in and been awesome, arguably the most impactful two-way guy this season, point blank period. I think he should be added to the roster at the end of the season. I think that's the way that this is trending, and I think there's a chance he gets playoff minutes for this group, just as a sturdy power guard who could defend either backcourt spot, even switch on to some threes, and then offensively is a connecting piece, a good rebounder for his size, and a solid short roll playmaker. So a couple more numbers here before I wrap on Goodwin. The Lakers' offensive rebound percentage increases by 10.8% with Goodwin on the floor, which is a significant increase. He's made a notable impact on their offensive rebounding, their putbacks. They've also generated 7% more turnovers with him on the floor defensively. So he fits into their defensive scheme and helps them get out in transition. Jordan Goodwin has been an awesome find, another one for the Lakers scouting department. And I think he has a chance to be the 9th or 10th man in the playoffs, which for them to find that guy right around the trade deadline, like we were talking about buyout market and this and that, and to promote him to a two-way spot and then to give him a shot and have him actually hit. Those are the types of moves around the margins that the Lakers haven't always done in the last few years. And it just feels like this could be a really impactful addition come April, May, and possibly June. And then the final takeaway is the Lakers' remaining strength of schedule. And this has been a consistent storyline for me over the last couple of State of the Lakers, just because the Lakers have had such a difficult remaining schedule. And so the Lakers have the 3rd toughest remaining strength of schedule. Their average opponent win percentage is 55%, which is really high. And looking at their schedule, toughest remaining opponents: OKC twice, Boston once, New York once, Denver twice, Memphis once, Houston twice, and then easiest remaining opponents: New Orleans once, Brooklyn once, Chicago twice, San Antonio once, Portland once, which really isn't that easy of a game with how Portland's been playing, and Orlando once, which also might not be that easy if they're a bit healthier later in the season. So the Lakers have a brutal schedule, and more specifically, just this week, they play New York on Thursday and then at Boston on Saturday. The following week, they have that back-to-back at Milwaukee, at Denver, Thursday, Friday. The next week, they're home against Denver and Milwaukee on Wednesday and Thursday. Then the next week, they go out on the road at Orlando, at Indiana, at Chicago, at Memphis. Then they're home to play Houston and Golden State. Then then that weekend, they go out on a 3-game road trip at OKC twice, then at Dallas in the big Luka return game. And then they close the season out with a home game against Houston, which will probably be a huge game for standings implications. And then at Portland, which like at that point, they're probably tanking, but they're also a team that's now crept into the play-in mix, and maybe with Dallas and San Antonio and Phoenix and some of the uncertainty there, like maybe they're in like that 9 or 10 spot, and Portland is playing for something to at least be a play-in team. So there are a lot of tough games remaining for the Lakers. And to my point earlier in the show, they've basically won every statement matchup they've had going on the past 6-7 weeks. So there's a chance here that they beat a lot of these teams, that they win a lot of these games, but it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Several of these, like again, just road matchups alone, at Boston, at Milwaukee, at Denver, at Orlando, at Memphis, at OKC twice, at Dallas, at Portland. Like they got a bunch of tough road games. At home, I'm more confident in them taking care of business and beating a lot of these teams. But in terms of the standings and this team's path to a conference finals, a finals, a championship, a lot will be determined here over the next 22 games. It feels like we've been talking about this schedule for a while, but they're finally getting to that stretch of like, especially the next 5 games outside of the at Brooklyn game, home New York, at Boston, at Milwaukee, at Denver, back to back. Like that is about as tough as it realistically gets. And we will see, can they go 3-2, 4-1, 5-0, 2-3? Like who knows? I would bet on 3-2, maybe 4-1. But we'll see, because again, they've passed every test that's been thrown at them. I think another subplot to all this will be the availability of Austin and Rui, and to a lesser extent, Jordan Goodwin. But a critical stretch coming up for the Lakers to close out the regular season. But that will do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Thank you all so much again for 1 year with Buha's Block. I appreciate you all watching and listening. I'll be back on Thursday night after Lakers Knicks. I will talk to you then.